This one it is called Sine Era Studio. Actually, that was the old title, the first title. I changed it. I used to expression ni slava ni volia. There are from the national anthem of Ukraine. What does it mean, Sine Era Studio? It's a Latin expression. Means basically neutral terms. Neutral. Not with the east, not with the west, not with the right, not with the left. Neutral terms. The translation is without anger or passion, without bitterness or partiality. Basically, in neutral terms. This quote is often used to remind historians, reporters, editors not to get carried away by emotion when they talk about war and crisis. Personally, when I talk about war and crisis and human suffering, I get emotional, more or less, for sure. Sine Era Studio was the name, the title of a letter. I have it here. It's just the plan of a letter I planned years ago, 2, 3, 4, I lost track of time, to write to Mr. President Vladimir Putin. I already wrote a letter to Mr. President at that time, Donald Trump, when I told him I am sick and tired of broken promises from the United States of America. And I told him to leave some meat on the bones as a metaphor when it was a big debate at that moment with Exxon and the royalties to be able to work together with the Americans to exploit, to develop the oil and gas fields under the sea in the Black Sea that belongs to the Romanian people. And apparently they didn't want to pay the royalties. It was a big debate. That's why I said leave some meat on the bones, pay some taxes, leave some money for the Romanian people. That was the letter I wrote to Mr. Donald Trump. I sent him some of his books to autograph them for me, and I bought a beautiful album, Romanian, with the Romanian monasteries, culture, history, civilization, and I sent it to him. Probably he was not at the White House, he was not, I don't know, no reply, nobody home. Hello, hello, anybody out there? I don't know. I'm not concerned anymore about that kind of question. I have here a few pages of the letter I sent to Mr. President of China, Xi Jinping. 7-page letter in simple words, very direct, very logical, telling him about who I am, what I want to accomplish in life, and basically telling him about my wife, my family, and the fact that I want to renovate that house. I'm not allowed to do that for various kind of forces around me, and I was asking his help to keep my family together and to be able to renovate the house, open a school for kids, summer school, summer camp, summer school, something like that. I also talked about being inspired of his vision of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. I thought, I still believe it's a wonderful idea. It's a good idea. Business is something that people do when they don't kill each other, when they don't do war. I kept this in my mind, in my knowledge, in my education. I think I read a book here about the history of the world, about the Silk Road. Amazing book. And I do believe that business is something that people do, trade, business. Infrastructure is something that people do when they don't make war and they destroy all of this. Sine era at studio, I said I wrote a letter to Mr. President Donald Trump. At that moment, he was in the White House. I read another letter to Mr. President Xi Jinping. I put some gift there, very meaningful. The most meaningful was the watch, wristwatch that my wife has, and some small replica of very meaningful statues from our history. The thinking man and the lady sitting, the sitting lady, they were 4,000, 45,000 years old, from Neolithic, meaningful, beautiful. As I wrote there, we don't have a terracotta army, an amazing discovery there, yet we have a long history. It was about history, civilization, and respect, a lot of respect between people. Great leaders, the little guy, everybody deserves some respect. Then I thought to myself, if I wrote to Mr. President Trump and Mr. President Xi Jinping, I should write one letter to Mr. President Putin. And having this controversial kind of history between us, the Russians, the Romanians, in the streets of Romania they were shouting to a certain party, Bolshevik, Bolshevik, the Red Plague, this and that. I found this title and I was not faced by what they were shouting in the streets of Romania, but I thought a letter in neutral terms will be absolutely appropriate. I haven't read that letter, I haven't sent that letter, yet I have the plan, the paragraphs here. I found it, and the first paragraph I wanted to write about our long history. And indeed, Russia and Romania, they have both very long history. And sometime in history, we were partners and allies. Uh, I have two examples in my mind. In 1877, we fought together the Ottoman Empire. And at the end of that war, Romania became an independent country. Very meaningful moment in the history of Romania. And of course, the last part of the Second World War, when together with the Red Army, with the Russian Army, we fought the Nazis. We fought the. It is true that the first part of the war we crossed a certain river and we fought at Stalingrad against the Russian army for very good reasons, because we have parts of our territory that we wanted back. Yes, we want to bring back the parts that were given to Russia, and still there are an independent Moldavian Republic. Long history together, and I make a note here that today we live in a multipolar world where Russia is a big power and have a role, a place to to play, a role to play on the international architecture of security, trade, in a multipolar world. My second paragraph, I was telling him, I intended to tell him about my life journey, as I am a guy born in Eastern Europe in 1967, how I emigrated to Canada and everywhere, from Canada to a Cuban beach, the one with the sand for sure, uh, on a boat going in a touristic area. I met and I work, I talk, I drink, I ate with Russians, and I always was happy to find them, to talk with them, to work with them, to drink with them, to discuss different topics from, I don't know, movies to history, from literature to women, beautiful women. We have beautiful women, they have beautiful women. We have excellent kind of food, they have excellent kind of food. So that's not a problem. We are never short of good, interesting subjects. I always felt comfortable with them. First and foremost, they knew where my country is. They knew where I'm coming from. They knew parts of our history. They knew parts of my culture, how I grew up. They knew about our common history, former USSR, Romania, the Pact of Warsaw. We had a lot of things in common. I wrote here we have more things in common than our differences. That's what I thought. That is what I still believe today. The third paragraph, I am paraphrasing Mr. President that he answered to a reporter in one interview. I used to watch his interviews. They are always interesting, educative, intelligent, and sometimes funny. He said to that reporter, I'm not your friend. My duty lays with 146 million of Russians. And I thought about that for sure. It's so easy to understand. 146 million of Russians, the Russian nation, a glorious one, and my country, 18 million people of Romanians, and other countries around. I wanted to write in this paragraph what I always thought that we can leave. Russia is not gonna move from their borders, from where Russia is situated. Romania is not gonna move anywhere as a country, as a nation, from where we are situated. The other countries, now I realize how prophetic those words might be. Maybe prophetic is not the right word. I'm not a prophet or in any way, or I'm a commenter of the news. And basically, I said we should learn how to live in peace, one each other like good neighbors. You should, even in a Christian way, you should love your neighbors like you know you love yourself. I also mentioned that my son's name, the choice was Vladimir. My mother said that's a Russian name. I said that's okay. But my mother said you have the Romanian version. Why not use the Romanian version? I said yeah, sure. I like the Russian, mainly beautiful name Vladimir. Now I understand there is another version Vladimir, but we have the Romanian version of the same name, so I use the Romanian version Vlad. In the fourth paragraph, I said why I'm watching him on TV and in his interview when he kept a speech there because of leadership, basically. And there are some qualities, and I write some there. In the fifth paragraph, I was thinking what kind of gift shall I send to Mr. President Vladimir Putin. to be meaningful like the other two presidents, and I found meaningful gifts. I said if I send a gift should be something important for me, something that I care about, something that I love and give to the other person because that's a gift. To buy something that is no importance to you and has no personal meaning or historical symbolic meaning is not a real kind of gift. It's just polite thing, but not from the heart. So I said I'm gonna send him my black belt and the logo of the karate school, a picture with my black belt exam. That was a long time ago. I was young, but you can see the effort on our faces. It's easy to see there. We are completely exhausted, drenched in sweat after 3 days of exams that were put together in only 2 days because of a conflict with the flight schedule. Our teachers had to go fly out early. A picture of my son Vladdy, an icon from the Athos mountain. We share the same Christian Orthodox faith, and some Troika. Troika is plum brandy. Actually, not only plum brandy. I put some samples, some pears, some apples, and some prune. How do you say? I don't know. Other kind of plum brandy. Pears, apples, and plum. That's Troika. As they have their vodka, we have our Troika, and if you distill twice, I describe the procedure in my book. It is called Palinka or Horinka. Yes, Palinka is apparently the Hungarian name. And the last but not the least, I handwritten invitation for visiting me at Ithaca because at that moment I was still thinking that it might be a wedding with my wife. There is no wedding, there is no wife. The marriage was destroyed by design on purpose as an example. And I finished my letter, plan of a letter, 3 words, safe, free, and together. Together doesn't mean necessary me and him together or Romanian and Russian together, but together in the way I found it, in the meaning I found it even in the Olympic motto now, as higher, faster. My head is not at the Olympic. And the last word they did there together. For obvious reason, my head is not at the Olympic. What I admire of Mr. Putin, I wrote here, yes, I admire his intellect. I used to admire his intellect. It was obvious that he was talking as an intelligent leader, articulated, complex, capable of speaking in long and logical sentences, not like other leaders. I don't want to give names. And I like that. I like his long, complex, logical sentences. His command of foreign languages, English, German, and English, I admire that. Not the last or the least, his humor. He showed his humor more than once. His love for sports and outdoor activities. It's well known he's a black belt in judo. I did a little bit judo. I have a great admiration for the sport and not the only one. I did a little bit of karate. His love for hockey, I think, is a wonderful game. Living in Canada, it's the national game. swimming, horse riding, yes, the love of outdoor activities. His sense of style is undeniable. He looks good in a suit. He has a very athletic kind of walking, like a leader, like a man. I like that. The last but not the least, for sure, his knowledge of history, deep and detailed knowledge of history, and for sure his achievements. There is undeniable that under his leadership, 20 years plus, the life of the Russian people improved from the social disaster. It was talked a lot about his speech about being the greatest disaster of the 20th century when there are two world wars there, the collapse of the USSR. I don't know how you measure those kind of disaster in the number of million of people that died. Million of people died in gulags and working camps after the Second World War finished. But for sure, nobody can deny that the collapse of the USSR, in terms of human suffering and social disaster, it was a social disaster, very hard years, not only for the Russian people, but in the 90s in Romania, it was a wild west kind of capitalism with the oligarch in Russia, with the cardboard millionaires and billionaires in Romania, and all of this. I wrote only a few things that I honestly admire at Mr. President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. However, this morning I woke up, I opened the TV and I saw the dogs of war were unleashed. I heard the sirens screaming in the cities of Ukraine. Basically, after long discussion and a lot of talks and diplomatic back and forward and meetings in person, online meetings with the other world leaders, Mr. Putin made what I call, in my modest understanding of history, a historical mistake, invading Ukraine. That's how I feel, that's how I believe. We use the word history, and Mr. President used the word history, and not only once, in his recent speeches. I'm not a student of history as he is. I have a lot of history books here, but I read some of them. But one thing I know for sure, the historic fact that Ukraine is an independent country. All the international institutions on the face of this world, the United Nations, the European Union, all the international institutions recognize Ukraine as an independent country for many, many years now. Decades. Mr. Putin is the only one that doesn't recognize the right of Ukrainian people to exist as an independent country, an independent nation. Russia, under the leadership of Mr. President Putin, is invading this country, is bombing this country as I speak. That came as a shock to me. and as a shock to the entire world, civilized world. I always said that it's a fact of life, I'm paraphrasing Mr. President Vladimir Putin, that used in one of his speeches at a fair, and he laid down some facts there. It is a fact of life, a fact of history that Russian people and Ukrainian people can, can live peacefully one with another if they are not pushed to conflict, hate, separatism, and war. There were long diplomatic talks and a lot of media wars, propaganda wars, informational wars, and disinformation. Yet, it is a fact that Ukraine, with a conflict, open conflict in Donbass, did not meet the criteria of joining NATO. It was a lot of talk of Ukraine joining NATO will be a threat, an existential threat, we'll say, to motherland, fatherland, Russia. That's the vision of Mr. President Vladimir Putin. Yet it was a false pretext of war, as it was even for me, for everybody else. We realized that Ukraine didn't meet the criteria of joining NATO. Romania tried to join NATO from 97 till lately in 2004. We were admitted. So it's not a process that is happening tomorrow, next week, or in a year. Even if Ukraine wants to join NATO, the pretext for war was false. The entire rhetoric for building the tension, the story, to sell the story to the world and mostly to the Russian people was false. It is a fact that NATO could not roll back history, as Mr. Putin asked in his diplomatic talks and letters back and forward with NATO, with the Americans. NATO could not roll back the borders on the 97 borders, and actually my feeling is that Mr. Putin wants to see the Berlin Wall rebuilt, the Iron Curtain there, in his own vision of history. It was a fact that this desire, this challenge, this was mentioned there because they knew, the Russian knew that it is impossible to, is not going to be fulfilled, to give them more ammunition in their propaganda war. Oh, we asked NATO to do this and that, and they didn't do. It is simply to see that in so-called diplomatic talks, Russia was never genuine. They did not negotiate it in good faith. It was just political theater to gain time for the military build-up, to put the equipment, the military personnel and equipment in place, to surround Ukraine, to put those 30,000 troops in Belarus, to be ready for invasion. So gain time for the military build-up and to wait for the Olympics in China to end and then to start the invasion, as they did. As the Americans this time said they will do, and they were spot on, their information were right, and the Russia did exactly what the Americans said they will do. After the Olympics ended in China, they started the invasion. It is clear now that the attack was meticulously planned in every detail and premeditated. It is clear now that all the speeches that Mr. Putin gave were meant to falsely justify an invasion of an independent state. In 2014, he took a piece of Ukraine, the Crimea Peninsula, and then there was the problem with the separatist movement that they moved in to protect, to defend. They moved the Russian army across the border to defend and protect the separatists, the Russian-speaking population across the border. I'm not a student of history, but I remember a very similar situation in the Second World War when they moved in. The Germans moved in to defend the German-speaking population in former Czechoslovakia. If I'm not mistaken, it was the Sudet region or something like that. Mr. Putin made a lot of references in his speech about a lot of things. There were references about the war in Yugoslavia, the invasion of Iraq, the way NATO behaved in the past. Yet, however, as I said in very simple words, I'm not going to go through all of these because the conclusion is important. There is no excuse for invading Ukraine. Whatever NATO did in Iraq, whatever the situation was with the bombing of ex-Yugoslavia, and the way they killed each other, left and right. The massacre they did one against another because they are not the same, the Serbs are not Bosniak, the Bosniak are not Croatian. There are Slovaks, I don't know what is that much of a difference to be honest. From when I'm standing, honestly, I don't know. I want to apologize to them, but for me, as I said, they are all very good people. I don't know the difference between the Montenegrin people and the Slovak because all my life I grew up with one country there that I understand there are different in language and religion, but again, even there was no reason to kill each other the way they did. Today, coming to present, there is no excuse. There is no excuse in history of Russia, in history of invasion of America in Iraq or Afghanistan, in history of ex-Yugoslavia war, there is no excuse for invading Ukraine. There are only lessons to be learned. The terrible loss of life of Russian soldiers, Russian army in Afghanistan, the terrible and the mess that is destruction of Iraq under the American invasion, after the American invasion, and the terrible suffering in Kosovo and West Yugoslavia, the massacres that are hard to read about, how about to live there. When I saw people sitting on the bridges in that war, trying to defend their bridges against bombardment, my heart was there. When I see people today in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian city being bombed by the Russians this time, I cannot just enjoy my coffee, walk my dog. Mr. President, with great sadness, I have to say that the way you acted today, invading Ukraine, you confirm all the labels and stereotypes they, the West, put on you, and I dismiss all of them. Basically, not that you need my defending, but I defended all of them. They say you are a KGB guy. They keep saying and reminding the American people this and that. And at a certain point, I said, yeah, he's a KGB guy. There is nothing wrong to be part of the Romanian Secret Service or the Russian Secret Service. It's a matter of patriotism, especially now I know your history, family history. Your father fought the war, your grandfather was the cook of Stalin, and you have a military history, more or less, in the family. So I said there is nothing wrong to be a KGB guy. Actually, I'm sure the KGB did not recruit the dumbest and the stupid and the one that have no qualities, but the best and the brightest. Yeah, they said you're a KGB guy called Hardy, cynically a cold-blooded killer, and a leader that has no respect for human life. What shall I say? What shall I believe when I opened the TV and I saw the shelling of Ukrainian cities? They say that you are a dictator, that you stay too long in power and you are thirsty for power and you kill everybody else just to stay in power in a client mafia kind of state with an oligarch. And yeah, I think uh, they have to look in the mirror first to talk about anti-corruption. Yet they also say that you have imperialistic kind of nostalgia, and now you put your armies, your tanks, your planes to go over the border to invade your neighbors. That is an imperialistic attitude. Russia, dreaming of the Russian Empire and conquering neighboring countries as they did in the, I don't know, 18th century, 17th century, 18th, 19th. They said you are nostalgic for the former USSR. I said no, nobody is nostalgic in that way for former USSR and communist societies. They had a taste of freedom, of capitalism. They enjoy their wealth, or at least their free kind of society. Through your action today, Mr. President, you confirm all the labels and stereotypes they put on you. They said you are a warmonger. I said no, Russia is living in peace there. The Russian people are doing well as far as I saw on TV, this and that. Now you invaded another country. They call you a Hitler of the 21st century, and I said that's absurd. That's absurd. That's insulting and absurd. It's a preposterous kind of comparison. I really said that. I thought that and I said that. As a proof, I wrote it down and I'm saying it now. Yet, some of your moves remind me and the entire world of the days of the before the Second World War, where Hitler took a piece of this country and another piece of this country and another piece of this country and another piece of this country. And the leader came with a piece of paper saying it's gonna be peace, and then Hitler, Russia made a pact with him. Poland was divided between two predatory kind of powers, and then the famous image that is seared in my when the Germans lifted that barrier and entered Poland in September 39. That much I know. I did not know that much about the war in the East, the Japanese invasion, the Chinese war, the Chinese civil war, and the atrocities that happened there before 1939. But now I know I read a little bit about Mr. President. Yet the fact Russia did not negotiate in good faith. First. Second, this is a war of choice. I like this expression because it's true. This is a war of choice, not the kind of war that could not be avoided, mitigated, negotiated diplomatically in good faith. Third, you and only you are bringing death and destruction to the Ukrainian people and also to the Russian people that they were fighting there. On TV, they say, they wrote there, I don't know, 14 Russian tanks have been uh, exploded, something like that. Russians being the invaders, somehow this is good because the invaders are defeated. Actually, it's lose, 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 and because in those tanks there are fathers and husbands and sons that they have families in Russia. 14 families in Russia have been hurt. As I said, history will judge you for that. You threaten in your speeches everybody that will intervene in any way. Mr. President, I want to remind you simple facts. One, I spoke loud and clear, and I write in my novel about the Russian culture as much as I know about it, very little. Very little, I think under 1% if you can. But when I grew up, there were some novels, poems, music, and movies, films, cinema that made an impression in my upbringing, and I wrote about it, honestly, with honest words, when I thought it was meaningful for my personal development, and it is still meaningful today. Second, I spoke and write about the floods of the corruption, the hypocrisy of the West, United States of America, European Union, NATO, in unequivocal terms, loud and clear. I did it, not only once. on regular basis. They're hypocrites. So, sine ira studio, in neutral terms. They accused me at that moment that I am pro-Russian speaker, that I'm on the TV they were speaking about something that I had no idea that existed, Sputnik kind of site or something. I learned it from TV. For me, Sputnik it was the satellite then, and later on I learned that is the vaccine, which is very good, I hope, to curb the COVID epidemic. No, I wasn't. I wasn't speaking for the Russians. I said that in that particular topic, United States of America, European Union, NATO were wrong and highly hypocritical. That's the way it is. I talked about recently doing business not work. Basically, to strengthen our, instead of having war and sanctions like we have today and tomorrow and next week, death and destruction, sanction, to choose peace and focus on the standard, to raise the standard of living of people in Russia, in China, in Europe, in Romania. It's a great model for a government. This is the job of a government. That's why they are there, to work, to raise, to increase the standard of living of their people. I talked about the well-being of the Russian businesses worldwide, because those Russian businesses, not for personal gain, but those Russian businesses are feeding the people. You know, the employees, the Russian people. I talked about the Russian economy and the well-being of the Russian economy and the regular Russian family. They will be the one to feel the full impact of sanction, economical sanction. As I talked about, I took that picture, I talked about the impact of the economical sanction on Cuba, economical sanction on Venezuela, on others. You know, the autocrats, the soldiers, the top brass of the army, the guys, they don't have a shortage of food. They live well. Even in the time of sanction, they live very well. The one that they are highly affected are the regular Russian people, the regular Cuban people, the regular European people, the regular American people. That's why I talked about that, not for personal. When they talked about regime change in China, in Russia, I talked about the need for stability. Basically, in simple words, the need for you to stay in power, as you are a garant for the stability of Russia. Instability in Russia will be very bad for the Russian people and for everybody else around the world. I truly believe something like that. That is the reason why I didn't applaud, jump when I saw all kinds of movements like Arab Springs or people in the street screaming for freedom or freedom not to wear masks or blocking the parliament with trucks and all kinds of things like that. Or in Romania throwing Molotov cocktails to the policemen and to the buildings, government buildings, like they did in Kazakhstan, like they did in Romania, like they did in America with the Capitol attack. And this is not freedom and democracy. It's rather chaos or instability, which is bad for everybody else. I'm not a student of history. as you are, yet it is easy to remind everybody of 1917, the Russian Revolution, so dangerous, so bloody. They were terrible times in history. And the last and not the least, I try to save Ukrainian lives through my speeches. And again, not the last, not the least, I try to save Russian lives. Russian lives. The lives of Russian people that now they have sent 190,000 are sent dead, and some of them will die. I don't know how many. I hope none of them. I try to save Russian lives. I played here the symbolic moment, the happy moment when I wasn't happy that Russia was retreating and lost the war in Afghanistan. Why should be happy in 2021, 2022 for something that happened far away from me and long time ago in history? But I was happy for the people that survived, the young. If you look at the picture, the video of that column crossing that bridge coming home, you see the young faces of young Russian soldiers and the general and the son and the happiness, the human happiness that they survived and they come home. Not in body bags, not with wounds that some you can see, some there are psychological scars. That's what I try to do, Mr. President. You said in your Munich 2000, let me find it. 2007, yes, 2007 Munich, at the Security Council in Munich, you started your speech as an introduction. If my comments were somehow polemic, I ask you not to get annoyed with me or angry with me. Vladimir Putin speech, Munich 2007. And then you talk about it's a meaningful speech. You talk about global crisis, global responsibility. Yes, I do believe that Russia has a global responsibility not to invade Ukraine. Yet you choose. I don't know your reasons, how the situation looked from your side. However, it is very clear now that you choose, you plan, you premeditated an invasion of Ukraine. Some said that this will be your legacy. I think it will be a very bad one. History will judge you for the suffering you brought to those people. That speech, it was written in the morning when I opened the TV and I saw the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Just to put it in context, there is a postscriptum to this speech, talk, discussion, opinion. There is political theater on this side too. About your threats, Mr. President, everybody who will intervene, there are serious threats. I take them very serious, and I'm not ashamed to say that I'm afraid. Yet I have to tell the truth here that I've been tortured now for 8 years. My family was in the same kind of game. All members of my family surrounded, put down, mentally tortured. or physically. My son was brainwashed against me. They took me out to run in the park as a torture, a form of torture. Apparently, it was a marathon, as a show and a satanic occult kind of ritual that it came to me as an understanding that was a reenactment of an old 4,000-year-old kind of marathon ritual from I don't know what kind of pharaoh, what kind of things happened 4,000 years ago, but I knew what I lived through. They took me out in the park day and night, sometimes many times over one night, and they pushed me to do 150 laps, and there were hundreds of flames on the plane, on the sky when they finished, and a lot of people participated from my profound shock, broken trust in humanity, participated like a mob, flesh mob there, in torturing me. I have been tortured here in right here where I sleep to these walls in Havana syndrome kind of. I don't know what kind of signals there is on Wikipedia about the Russian signals, about the time when the Russian embassy, American embassy in Moscow in the 70s went under some kind of radio, different kind of frequencies, signal, that's why they call it the Russian signal. They detected with great difficulties because it's invisible, it's radio waves or other kind of waves that you don't see them, but and even you don't feel them in one day or in 10 minutes or in an hour. Sometimes you do depend on the frequency and the intensity and the type of wave. Yet it is easy for everybody to read on Wikipedia about the Russian signals, and now there are witness, there are people that they are talking about Havana syndrome, a form of attack, of a wave kind of attack that happened in Havana to diplomats and CIA operatives and other kind of people, but not only in Havana, all across Europe and even in the United States of America, even in the perimeter near the White House of high level operatives in the American government, but not only the American operatives. There is a documentary, 60 Minutes, Australian TV. I'm not talking theory of conspiracy, megaphone for all kind of. As I said, I'm not Alex Jones. It is a fact from this wall they can target me different, my head, my heart, my feet, different kind, and if they turn the button strong enough, I also the waves were so powerful physically that knocked me down from this chair where I sit now. Literally, and physically. I almost fell down. Nobody knows. I talked about it. Leaders of Romania, civil services, leaders of the world, nobody knows. Yet, funny thing, when I give speeches here, everybody took a piece of the speech and a certain expression from my speeches went on CNN, on Romanian TV, on United Nations, a gesture, a thing, took a piece of me, all of you, but you look the other way when I was tortured for 8 years. You touch your eyes, you touch your nose, you do your mafia kind of things, yet you look the other way when I was tortured myself and my family for 8 years. I have been beaten in front of my building, physically this time, by a mob of young kids between 13 and 17, even more, 10, 15 people, a mob, almost broke my jaw, almost beat me down. Some of Other people that came and defended me, they say they produced a knife, and probably the police would not have been there in less than 5 minutes, and other people would not have been defending me. Probably I would have been even dead. It's not complicated to kill a man. It is more complicated to do the right thing sometimes. Apparently, even to the leaders of the world. I have been beaten, they broke my jaw, I went to have medical attention. I didn't receive the entire medical attention that I needed. They put pieces of wire in my mouth for weeks, not to talk anymore. And I went to the police. Everybody in the neighborhood knows those young guys that beat me up. They have girlfriends in this building. Some of them they live in the other building, and some of them they came from another neighborhood. There were cameras all over. Yet 1 year, 2 years passed. Apparently the police couldn't find them entirely because they promised me they will ask me back to identify them in some pictures. They never did. I have been threatened directly, indirectly, metaphorically, and by analogy, showing me different kind of terrible things that can happen to me, to my mother, to my wife, to my son, to other members of the family, and that almost daily for 8 years now. I have been threatened hundreds of times, literally. All my family and my friends were under the same kind of threat. I don't know about my friends. I don't think I have any friends left. Friends to call each other, to talk to each other, especially in very difficult time, but we've been isolated in all kinds of bubbles, individually broken down, the relationship, the communication. When I try to call my son, somebody is interrupting the conversation. When I try to call my wife, somebody is interrupting the conversation. When I try to meet my ex-wife, doesn't matter, we still can talk very polite one with another to give her a gift of a beautiful book that I bought for her. It was a psychic attack to bring chaos here. All of those and so many others that I'm not gonna talk, they were true. I asked left and right for help and to stop this satanic Masonic game that you play on the international level. Yet all the leaders of the world, I don't have proof but I'm sure they know about it, but they look the other way. They play their games, they touch their eyes, they touch their nose. My simple question to them today as Ukraine is under shelling and attack. Where was your pyramid or your all-seeing eye, your Masonic kind of family, all for one and one for all? I understand Article 5 at NATO. It's very good. However, where is your all-seeing eye? When terrible things happen from America to China to uh, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, the list goes on and on and on and on. Your all-seeing eye is nowhere to be found. It's disgusting only to talk about. We couldn't help. I asked for help, including from Mr. President Putin, as world power, world leaders, right? At the international level, our president apparently is just a provincial one. We couldn't help a decent Romanian family to renovate a house to keep the family together. Yet there are Russian speaking people in front of my building. There have been Russian-speaking people when I was tortured in the park, as they were Chinese-speaking people and looking like Chinese when I was tortured in the park. Made me look down after the moment I lifted my eye from the ground, and I don't think I'm gonna look down again. You couldn't help a decent Romanian family, yet you can. You can invade. With 190,000 troops, you can invade on land, in the air, and on the sea. Then, with cyber attacks, you can invade a peaceful country that was not an existential threat for your country, Russia. You can do that. Isn't this a paradox? Obviously. And the list goes on. They put dust under the seat of my car, my old car. They opened my car and put dust under the cover of the seat. The seats were covered. They took the cover off and they put dust under the seat and they put the cover on. I was sitting on some kind of dust that a lot of it, I mean, not a little, a lot of it, that has no way of being there without the criminal hand place it there under the cover of the seat. And I clean it up, and then a week or two later they put dust under the seat of the passenger seat where my wife was sitting. I cleaned that one too. And then next I saw on the TV how they put a bomb under the seat of a guy that was apparently involved with cigarette trafficking in a western city near the border in Romania. The guy blew up. So the message was simple. Now we can do that with the dust, some dust, just to show you that we can. Next time can be a bomb under your seat. Yeah, I got the message. I understand. What can I do about it? They put plastic needles in my yogurt bottle, and I drank half of it. Small, very little, small plastic needles, very thin, that they open like an arrow. When you drink them, they are together, and then they open up, and they are transparent, and it's very difficult to see them in the consistency of the yogurt. Yet at a certain point I found one between my teeth, I took it out, I said, oh, what is this? And then I realized that there were those needles in the yogurt, yet I already drank half of it. They put pieces of plastic in my spaghetti. It's time longer. I used to have it right here. I don't know what I did with it. There is somewhere. I moved. I had some olives one morning, and they were good. And when I took one of the olives, my entire left part of the face of the mouth became numb, like in an anesthesia. Maybe it is because I make obvious loud and angry and commands about this kind of gesture from the highest level of the planet. Yes, for sure. I think there is a connection. So they sprayed an olive, or I don't know what they did to it. They sprayed a champagne biscuit and I had later on digestive problem, actually gases, not kind of the same gases that you were about to pump to Germany, to Nord Stream 2, digestive problem. And they attack my family with biological weapons, viruses, different kind of viruses. I'm not gonna enumerate them. My son have lung TBC, consumption. My mother recently had COVID. They attacked me with herpes and other kind of things. Long ago, premeditated. People on TV, they are touching their lips. Oh my God, this and that. They are touching their nose. They are touching their lips. They are touching like Scarface. They are touching the Masonic eye. They are touching this. They are doing all kind of strange gesture, and I'm talking leaders of the fucking world. Journalists and comedians of American TV. Apparently, they all saw the Pineapple Express, the beginning of the amazing Hollywood movie, an amazing piece of export of culture and civilization of America. I'm ironic here. I'm deeply ironic here. They wrote the name of my wife on a wall in a cemetery nearby, making fun of my love, of my soul. They wrote with spray, I love you, Isa, and then with another can of spray they say, suck up, Isa. And then to my dismay, I saw presidents at the highest level doing all kinds of gestures. And I heard you using the same kind of expression, like it or don't like it, suck it, baby. In talking about Ukraine, yet, you know, when you are in this kind of situation, as I am, for 8 years, with threats about my family, my wife, they took her away from me. Of course, you don't know these mafia kind of things in Russia because Russia is such a clean kind of country. You don't know those kind of. Of course, you don't know. They make my mom into a zombie. I have been threatened with psychic attacks. They broke when I was about to go and skate. They broke my back. Yes, it can be done energetically, psychic, telepathic, and it was done many, 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 many times with me, and not only with me. Every person who watch TV, they are mentally conditioned with colors and shapes and a lot of things there. So, having in mind all of this in the last 8 years, now today when I woke up, that's what I live and how I live. With disrespect for myself, profound disrespect for me as a person, profound disrespect for my family, my mother, my wife, my son, and everybody else. And now I wake up this morning and you invade Ukraine, and then you threaten everybody else. Obviously, I knew about Novichok. I defended you then too. I thought there is somebody who wants to. It was the football championship, and I said it's a făcătură, a made-up kind of thing, and I realized it wasn't. I know about dioxin in Ukraine. I know about polonium in England, if I'm not mistaken. I know about it. How should I live my life then? I'm paraphrasing you as I learned from you. You said that They were threats against your life and attempts at your life, and you said something so simple and meaningful that there is a saying in Russia, there is a saying in Romania too, with different words, but absolutely the same meaning, that the one that is meant to die by hanging is not going to die by poison. The one that is meant to die by bullet is not going to die by knife. The one that is meant to die by drowning, I like swimming and I like the outdoor activities that you do, is not going to be caught and die in an avalanche. No, Mr. President and everybody else, no, I do not have a death wish. I talked about that, absolutely not. I do not want to be a martyr, absolutely not. Even the term martyr is it's very strange to me. It's far away from my universe, from my day-to-day life, the way I was educated and brought. And frankly speaking, paraphrasing, frankly, I won this election. No, it's not that kind of frankly, like in America. And frankly, this is the real kind of frankly. I do not want to be in this position to give this speech today. No, I don't. I have other things to do in my life. On the contrary, as I said before, I did admire you, and I did want, there is no secret, to have some time, some of your time, to have an interview or to ask you a meaningful question. I was jealous of Mr. Oliver Stone, spending time with you. Of course, I'm not Mr. Oliver Stone. I did not fought in Vietnam. I'm not a student. I don't have his age. You are at a similar age, more or less. He's a well-known director. He made amazing movies. He has a life career very respectful, and he is a student of history as well. But I was jealous of him. I said I can ask a few meaningful questions myself. For half an hour, I have a lot of questions to ask. However, as I said, you have an amazing life story. However, 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 there is no meaning for that now. What question shall I ask? Mr. President, why did you choose to invade Ukraine? To bring death and destruction to those innocent people, and to listen to your history lesson, history interpreted by yourself in your own vision of history? Excuse me, Mr. President, I'm not interested in that. The only meaningful question will be, does it worth it? That invasion, does it worth it? The loss of human lives, the body bags with Russian soldiers, the terrible suffering you are going to impose on that country, on that population, and on your country too. You know better. History will judge you for that. Now, I did not want to be in the position to give this speech. Yet, what would have been the alternative? To change the cable on TV on my remote control and watch a movie, watch some sports. I have cable sports. To go and walk my dog as a regular day, to have a beer in the park, act like nothing happened, to be so kind of selfish, not to acknowledge what I saw in the morning happening. And no, I don't want fame and fortune, but I don't want to work as a slave. Nobody wants to work as a slave, and I did it for 8 years. My life was a show, and you know about it. A lot of people know about it. for the market, for the betting industry, or for anybody else, including political figures of the world. You all play your money game. So, to look the other way like nothing happened, this is what the leaders of the world did. And my family was under attack. They looked the other way. They thought nothing happened. On the contrary, they played again, they played again. To finish the last adjustment in my novel, that every time when I try to write, they irradiate me through the wall to finish my novel. Why we don't read more romance anymore? I talked about it. Yes, I want to publish it. I want to finish it. To do the latest adjustment, to put beautiful pictures about Romanian culture, about sculptures, about monasteries, about the places and the people I'm talking about, because a picture speaks like 1,000 words. And I'm a storyteller, I'm not a great writer. What shall I do? Shall I have my coffee, shut down the TV, turn off the TV, have my coffee, finish my novel? But in my novel, I wrote so clear, so meaningful, so logical. As I grew up, as a member of the Pact of Warsaw, we were allies, fighting together the West, and now, after December 89, after 2004, we are member of NATO, and we have to fight the East. It means Russia and China mainly, and frankly and honestly, I do not want to fight the West. I didn't want to fight the West at that time. As a kid growing up, I thought beautiful things come from America. America is a wonderful country. I didn't know that much about NATO alliance, but the West was great for me. Rock music came from West. The blue jeans came from West. Made in America things came from West, and they were good and lasted a lifetime. If they are tools, if they are cars, if they are not anymore. I didn't want to fight the West. When I grew up, I gave the famous quote, "There's a feeling I get when I look to the West and my spirit is crying for freedom," because at that moment we were not allowed to travel to the West. It was difficult. And today I do not want to fight the East in any way. You should read my book. Translate it into Russian. Will bring some personal perspective of history. It is meaningful for the Russian people, to the English speaking people, to the American people, to the Chinese people. I remember a line from a famous song, "The Russians love their children too." I truly believe that. We are not that different. Mr. President, in the 30th hour, actually in the first day of the full-scale invasion, please stop the invasion, stop the carnage, stop the killing of innocent people, and limit the damages. You made your point. No need for future fights. No more shelling of innocent civilians, men, women, and kids. Their innocent blood, their innocent blood will be in the end your legacy. Their innocent blood will shatter prestige, the prestige of the Russian nation on the international stage. Thank you, Mr. President. I played a little bit of the Christian Orthodox ritual. It was about we shall not kill as Christians. I hope that God will give you the inspiration to do the right thing. I think it is not too late. It is too late, but yet not too late. And there is another postscriptum about the year of the tiger, about a dragon, about a tiger that is the symbol of bravery and courage. The dragon is spirit dragon. The tiger is dynamic tiger, leaping tiger, and the tiger should have wings. The leaders of the world should come together to form a more inclusive, more sustainable, and more prosperous society. Mankind is surpassing difficulties by joining hands and surpassing challenges. Beautiful word. It is let's embrace cooperation for new horizons. And my favorite, that is my favorite, quote unquote, the international community have fought a tenacious battle. It was about COVID, the pandemic. Facts have shown, facts have shown that in the rampant torrents of the global crisis, countries are not riding separately in 192 small boats, but rather all in one giant ship. One giant ship. In our shared destiny, in which our shared destiny hinges. These are a few quotes and quotes from the speech that Mr. President Xi Jinping, the President of China, gave at Davos this year. Meaningful, meaningful kind of speech. I wrote down some expression as it was so metaphorically and poetically. I like the part of the 192 small ships, a giant ship. I wrote in my book about an admiral with a huge fleet in the Ming Dynasty. Now it's not called Ming. The original title, first title was of that chapter was Ming, but then I changed it. The drinking night with Castro. It happened in a bar in Calgary called Ming, and then I read about the Ming Dynasty, and then I read very interesting things about Chinese history, culture, and civilization. Small boats may not survive the storm, but giant ships will brave the storm. Mr. President, in simple words, excuse me that I'm blunt and direct. In the morning in China, right now, they are preparing for the Paralympic Olympic Games. I made a speech about do not disturb my circles, about the Olympic spirit of the Olympic Games they just finished. Wonderful, wonderful, and great achievement. Too bad that other subject did not allow me to enjoy the beauty of the Olympics as day by day as I would have loved to do that. The Paralympic Games now are taking place in Beijing. Highly important, I said they are as important as the other ones. It is a shame that they are not covered the same kind of media coverage. And I saw at CGTN that they are talking about the pursuit of a happy life. That's the motto, the meaning of the Paralympic Games. It's exactly what I saw on TV this morning on CGTN, China Global Television Network. The expression is copied from there, the pursuit of a happy life. In the same time, if you change the channel, and I'm sure there are enough TVs in China, in the same time, in Ukraine, I saw people in the subway station waiting to be bombed. I saw people panic. I saw the dogs of war being unleashed. And my question is, in your vision, Mr. President, did the Ukrainian people have the right of pursuing a happy life? It's actually a very simple question in very simple kind of English. I'm curious if I would be a reporter, which obviously I'm not, they did not allow me to come to China. I asked in an email for an interview, and I'm sure you're very busy. I'm not ironic here. You are very busy, as everybody else, as world leaders. Yet it's a simple question. Did the Ukrainian people have the right of pursuing a happy life? In your vision, Mr. President. Mr. President of China. Mr. President, very simple, direct, and very blunt the way I see it. The treaties that you signed with Mr. Putin at the beginning of the Olympics to buy gas from him and that meaningful partnership, the act that you said there are no limits for your friendship and partnership in real life actually enabled him to invade Ukraine. Basically, in simple words, undiplomatically, as I'm not a diplomat, you said, go Putin, go. We have your back economically, we, the Chinese, China. We have your back economically and strategically as we align our forces to fight the Western alliance. Go Putin, go and kill as many Ukrainian people as you want because we will look the other way. We, China, will hide cowardly between wooden diplomatic language at the United Nations in our speeches. Actually, there was no speech of Mr. President Xi Jinping about the situation of Ukraine. Or at least I don't know to be one. Wooden diplomatic language, which urge all the parties to dialogue and blah 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 and respect for blah 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 blah. That's wooden diplomatic language. There is no doubt in my mind that your Chinese secret services knew all too well what Mr. Putin had in mind when he shook his hand at the beginning of the Olympics and signed the treaties to buy his gas and basically gave him your approval to invade another independent country. Mr. President Xi Jinping, I asked a question years ago. Honestly, with all the respect in the world, it's a philosophical question. It's a social kind of question, geopolitical kind of question, economical kind of question. Is China a force of good in the world? Why I'm asking this question? For simple reasons. When history asks for the greatness of China, for the massive power of China, for the leadership of China, to fulfill your UN Security Council obligation to maintain peace and stability and prevent a war, in my simple, modest, not humble, modest view, China failed to fulfill its promises. I can ask a simple question, where is that win-win situation that you talk about, and I appreciate, I admire and I appreciate it so much. Where is the win-win for the Ukrainian people? Ukraine, an independent country with 45 million people, is not in that big boat that you are talking about in your speech at Davos. If Russia have grievances and concerns about security and a superior army, that means that can invade anybody they want, anybody they want in that big boat of yours? Or as I wrote in my novel, Mr. President, you should read it, translate it. I wrote in my novel, in that big fleet of Zheng He, of the great admiral, Chinese admiral Zheng He, from the Ming dynasty, basically every captain have the permission to attack whoever he feels like and whenever he feels like. I thought all the fleet, the big boat, 192, or all the fleet of Zheng He, they go in one direction to fulfill the mission that they have to fulfill. In simple words, Mr. President, when America lied to the world at the United Nations about the weapons of mass destruction to start a war in Iraq, I talked loud and clear about it. Yet when America is at the United Nations to stop a war, I applauded. Where was China then? Did China make any effort to stop the war? In simple words, the gas that you are buying from Russia is paid with the blood of Ukrainian innocent people. I think I don't know how the world works at that kind of level of power, how the world leaders treat each other, but obviously not with the respect they should. I'm talking from experience, but from time to time, apparently I'm the anger interpreter, as the Obama have an anger interpreter there for some of you out there to insult each other. I think a phrase, a simple phrase like that, I'll buy your gas, Mr. President Putin, yet I insist, I, President Xi, or we, the Chinese people, China, insist to find a diplomatic solution and only a diplomatic solution to your concern and grievances with the West. I think this kind of phrase could have been enough to prevent a war. Call me naive, yet I hope it is not too late to pick up the phone, Mr. President, and call Mr. Putin, and for the sake of our shared humanity and our shared future that you're talking about, ask him to stop the killing of innocent people, to stop the invasion of Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. President.